The following video is for educational purposes only. Do not attempt to replicate any of the stories or betting strategies discussed in this video. If you have or know someone with a gambling addiction, please seek help immediately. Okay, so I want to tell you a gambling addiction story about the time when I saw a guy play for 24 hours straight. Now, normally in these gambling addiction story videos, I was either sharing a story from my past or I've been reading a lot of these stories that I've been finding on Reddit. And so in this video, I wanted to recall a story from my past where I first noticed this phenomenon of a gambling addiction in another person and not just in myself, for example. And this took place all the way back in 2008. And I remember this because this was a year that my brother turned 21. And I was 24 at the time. And so my parents knew that we loved gambling, we loved playing poker, and so we decided to book a trip or have a family vacation in Las Vegas. And so we ended up staying at the Mirage Casino. And I remember that this was incredibly exciting for me and my brother because we were able to bring our poker bankrolls and take a chance at the big times in Las Vegas. And this was also a good family vacation or trip for my parents because they could go out and see a bunch of the shows without having to worry about me and my brother. And so I remember the very first day that we got there and we stayed at the Mirage and we ventured out to the poker room to scout out what type of games they were playing. I brought about, I think it was 3,000 US for the entire trip, which was about a week. And so what I would normally do would be to check out the poker room and see what stakes were being offered at the tables. And normally for something like No Limit Texas Hold'em, the lowest buy-in or the lowest stake is usually $200 buy-in, and the blinds are $1 for the small blind and $2 for the big blind. Now sometimes you could find a cheaper game where the blinds were $1 and $1, but that was a little more uncommon. Now, I vividly remember entering into the poker room with my brother and noticing the amount of action that was available at the $2, $5 tables, which is normally a $500 buy-in, as there was a ton of games going on there and there was a ton of players. And so we were a little tempted to play at a higher stake than we would normally play at, but because we only had a limited amount of money on hand, again, it was a couple $1,000s, that we decided to just play the lowest stake available, which was the $200 buy-in game. Now, what's funny about this memory, or what's rather sad, is I remember this day so clearly because this was one of my worst poker sessions that I've ever had as a professional player, or whatever you want to call it. And normally in poker, you always remember the days where you lost a ton of money, or you had a bad beat, or you got really unlucky, or something crazy happened. Those moments always are ingrained in your mind, and you kind of forget about the days where you're doing well and you make money. It's always those horrible days that imprint on your memory. And so me and my brother, we registered and we played at the same table. Now this definitely isn't proper etiquette or even ethical by any means, but we were just two young guys on our first trip to Vegas, and so we just wanted to play some cards. And now this is where the story got a little interesting, as I remember at the table, I think I was sitting in the 4 seat and my brother was sitting in the 9 seat. So normally at a poker table, where the dealer is, the person to the left of the dealer, that's the 1 seat, and the person to the right of the dealer is the 10 seat. So the way you can think about it is that me and my brother, we were at opposite ends at the table, in the 4 and I think it was the 9 seat. And what was really interesting was there was this, I want to say, middle-aged guy, maybe in his late 30s, early 40s, sitting in the 8th seat right beside my brother. And I distinctly remember this guy because he was a ton of fun. He was really talkative, he was ordering drinks, and he was getting a massage done with a masseuse behind him while he was playing for multiple hours. And of course, you have to pay for that. And so this guy was just a super entertaining, charismatic individual who made the game a lot of fun. And this is where things quickly went sour for me at the poker table, as I bought in for 200 and I quickly busted that, and eventually over the course of 2 hours I had to rebuy 4 or 5 times. So already on the very first day, at the very first night at the Mirage, I was down around $800. And in poker terminology, this is where you would say you're stuck or you're down in the game. But when I looked up and across the table at my brother, he was actually doing pretty well. I remember he was up about $500 or so, and that really fun guy that was beside him, he had this massive stack of red chips. Now, normally in the poker room, red chips are $5, and so if you have a stack of 20, that's a $100 stack. And so this guy had multiple stacks. He had like this huge mountain of chips beside him, and he was ordering alcohol, having fun, and telling jokes to the table, and he was still getting the massage while playing cards. And what's kind of wild is that we ended up playing all through the night. Me, my brother, and this dude, I can't remember what his name was, but we ended up playing, I think it was like a 17 or 18 hour session all the way until like 6 a.m. the next morning. And by then I was down around, I think it was a little over $1,000. And it was just one of those days where I just couldn't make any good decisions. I just wasn't playing well. It just wasn't my day. So I decided, I told my brother, hey, I'm going to quit. I had enough. Playing 16 hours of poker is just insane. And so he agreed to quit as well. We could go and get some breakfast. And what's kind of hilarious was that super charismatic guy who played all night with us, he wanted my brother to stay and to keep gambling with him. And so I told my brother that he could keep playing if he wanted to, and that I was just going to leave the poker room and get some breakfast. And what was sort of funny was that this charismatic dude, he convinced my brother to keep gambling with him by buying a massage for him. And so as I was leaving the poker room, I cashed out whatever little chips I had left, and I saw that my brother and this guy, they were sitting side by side, and they're both getting a massage at the same time. Now roughly an hour went by as I finished breakfast, and I met up with my brother who cashed out from the poker room, and I think he profited like $600 or $700, so he was incredibly happy. And so we decided to just call it a day and maybe meet up with my parents, have some lunch, and then just sleep for the rest of the day. Now, this is where this story takes a turn and gets kind of dark, as we went back down to the poker room at the Mirage, and for whatever reason, we saw the exact same guy from the previous night at the exact same table, wearing the exact same clothes in the exact same seat, just a couple seats over from the dealer. And so not only did we had this crazy poker session of 16, 17, 18 hours. But this guy that played with us all night, he ended up playing all day, all afternoon, all evening, and he was still there. He went over 24 hours without sleeping. And I remember I was like, wow, this guy is still playing. This is crazy, because you could just instantly recognize him by the same clothes he was wearing. But the one thing that was different was his stack. Those mountains of red chips that he had, they were all gone, and all he had left were 2 stacks of red. Now, 2 stacks of red, that is when you bust and you can rebuy for 200, for example. They give you 2 stacks of red chips. And so I was like, what happened? Like, did he leave and cash out all those chips and then come back and sit in the same seat and keep playing? But what I realized is that he had this morbid, disheveled look on his face. And he was kind of like this a lot, like looking down, sort of looking depressed or angry. And I realized he must have lost all that money back to the game. And this is a very common occurrence for gamblers, gambling addicts, poker players, is that you always find yourself chasing your losses. Whenever you end up doing well, maybe you win a couple $100, or you're feeling good, you're feeling lucky, and then for whatever reason, things start to turn and you start to lose money, you have this bizarre feeling that that money was yours. And then all of a sudden you start chasing that. You want to get that back. You feel like someone stole it from you, or the casino is taking it from you, and that's your money and you want to get it back, and so you chase those losses. And what's crazy was this was my very first encounter up close at what a gambling addiction could possibly look like, because this guy, he didn't shower, he didn't change his clothes, he didn't go to sleep, or he just kept going. And that takes an unbelievable amount of dedication, or a certain level of an addiction. And I think the moral of this story was that this really opened my eyes to what a gambling compulsion might look like. And it was incredibly scary as I saw this guy who was just beat down and destroyed. And for whatever reason, he just couldn't quit and wanted to keep playing. And what's crazy is that this guy noticed us and he waved us over, and he was sort of interested if we were going to keep playing. And I asked him, like, man, have you been playing this whole time that we were gone? I remember his response so distinctly, because he said that, oh yeah, I played all night. I kept going. I'm going to have a 36-hour session. And he said that like as if that was something a normal person would say. He said it like as if that's just a normal occurrence in human life. Just a 36-hour gambling session, business as usual. And I remember hearing that and I was like, wow, that's nuts. Like how could the human body even play that long? And that's so unhealthy for you, not just physically, but mentally as well. And it almost felt like he had some type of sickness. Now, this may seem like an extreme situation or person, but over the course of my 9-year poker career, I saw this everywhere. I saw this not only at the poker tables, but at slot machines, at the blackjack table, at the roulette table, at the craps table, like so many times. I remember seeing someone who had been playing for multiple days, wearing the same clothes, playing the same game in the same seat, and it's almost as if the casino has its hooks in them, and they just can't quit or stop for whatever reason. And so this was a really eye-opening experience for me, not just to learn about a gambling compulsion or addiction, but just seeing firsthand how much time gambling can suck away from your life. It could be hours, it could be days, it could be weeks. You could be doing so many better things with your time than just stuck in some casino, rolling the dice or throwing the chips or taking another spin at the wheel. And that's pretty much it. So if you enjoyed this video or found it helpful in some way, please let me know in the comment section down below. And if you want to watch another gambling addiction story, you can watch that right here.